So just keep that in mind as we're talking through things. And got the link to the chat, so we can get started here. I see Mark is changing the agenda already. Feel free to utilize the chat, the working doc, and then of course we're still a small group. So if you want to, unmute and ask a question, please do. By way of intro, I want to say hi. My name is April, and I'm the community manager for the Agones project. I'm super excited that we are getting our first community meeting off the ground and up and running. If you have not participated in an open source project like this or a meeting like this before, these are meant for you. So please do join to get updates on the project, to ask your burning questions, to share cool stuff you've been working on. This is all about your chance to connect with maintainers and then also just get those general project updates. The working doc is always available. We keep a running doc. We'll use it for every meeting. So if you have something you want to talk about the next time, please just jump in and add it in. Right now, we're thinking we will meet monthly. The timing will change that up since time zones are always fun to navigate with. And we'll tweak things to get the right time for as many people as possible. We'll always record the calls, so you'll always be able to catch up later if you are unable to make a call. And if you have any specific questions, again, throw it in the working doc and we'll address them. And you can always catch the recording later if you miss it. So please do reach out if you have any questions about anything. And if you have any feedback on the overall format, I am here. I'm happy to help with anything. My email address should be in that working doc, but I'll double check and make sure that it's there as well. And yeah, this is, again, your meeting. Very excited to have everybody here. And one of the first things that we wanted to talk about was just the overall project roadmap and, the contributing experience. So I know Mark and Cyril, you guys have been kind of mixing up the agenda. So it looks like, do I still have the right version? Mark's going to go first, or we change that?
No, I can still go first.
Okay.
I can still go. I moved like my extra stuff to the bottom because
okay, got it.
I was like, that's less like that stuff I'm happy to talk about, but I'd like to give other people some chances. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to bring up since we are gathering here together is sort of have a discussion around what does a 1.0 look like as a thing. And so we have a target and we can aim for the target and like sort of build against that and set some priorities that way. Ages ago on Slack, the way I set it up is basically saying whatever's in the current release milestone, actually I can even present it, it's probably easier, is what I was like, this is my opinionated opinion on what a 1.0 would be. But would also, well, that was weird. I just heard myself. But would also be quite happy to see like if other people have thoughts and that. So we've got like this doesn't mean that like other stuff won't necessarily go in. Probably the big features that we've got so far are like the C++ SDK needs to be done. Load testing, which I think is going to be a big job, just getting performance happening. We've Jarek, who's on the call, has been doing a lot of work on that and seeing some big improvements and also finding some pretty decent bottlenecks. So that's good. That's nice to have for local IP, for local stuff. Unity and Unreal, I think, are kind of a given for 1.0. Cyril's been working on statistic collection display. And some documentation stuff. But I think almost feature-wise, in some ways, I feel like we're close to 1.0, but I would also love to hear opinions from other people about things that they're like, no, there's absolutely no way that we can, like release this as a 1.0 if it doesn't have X feature. I've got thoughts as well on what like I think we can do like 1.1 and 1.2. But just like having a good milestone where we're like, this is good and production ready and you can run games on it. I think this probably gives us a pretty decent bare minimum. So I would love to hear thoughts and feelings, if anyone has them, or if they're like, this is awesome, in which case you don't have to say anything.
Hey, this is awesome, Mark. At one point, though, I was thinking that the fleet allocation currently, maybe we want to deprecate that entirely before 1.0.
Yeah, so that's already deprecated. Well, that'll get deprecated in 0.8.0. Actually, yeah, that's a good point.
So do you want an item on the roadmap for that? Or?
That's a good. So it's technically already done. If we have a look at closed, so that stuff is still open. But where are we? Somewhere in here. We actually have a lot of stuff. Allocation. There we go. Game server allocation implementation. So that's already there and it's done. So that the plan there is when that goes into effect, fleet allocation will become deprecated and we'll remove it. And I think it's 0.10. So we'll give it 2 releases. So that's there. I don't know if we want. So another interesting question that I had from this as well is this an okay way of managing openly like what a 1.0 looks like? Do we want like a top level 1.0 ticket that we can kind of comment on and provide feedback on? Do people have thoughts on that too? This is just an easy way of doing it sort of from my vision. Or do people just want me to start spreadsheets? I can start spreadsheets.
I personally like everything being in GitHub as much as possible.
I was saying that just to get a reaction, if nothing else.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it looks like Stephen had some comments in the working doc about some potential milestones. So I don't know if that's something that needs to be in for a 1.0.
We can talk about that. And like I said, like this doesn't necessarily preclude other people working on other things. I think this just kind of sets some priorities. I'll stop presenting so that no one can see that stuff.
Yeah, Stephen, excuse me, do you want to talk through some of the stuff that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so just really brainstorming some ideas to perhaps add to the milestone.
Yeah.
I saw it's great that we got the Unity and Unreal SDKs, but perhaps if we wanted to focus on SDKs, or we could do a bit of work on the Node.js one.
Getting a bunch of requests for that, yeah.
Yeah. I think we talked before about the RPC generating it automatically or something. So.
Can you write a ticket for that?
Yeah, I thought there was one, but I can't remember. Yeah.
Let me have a quick. I don't think there is one.
Yeah, I'll make it.
You're definitely not the first person to ask for that. And there's probably also actually something we probably should talk about at some point. And I remember when you write a ticket for it, is we should be very particular about like, if we're bringing in an SDK, it's an SDK that we want to support and have it be there for a long time and have a differentiation between SDKs we support and SDKs that we can have the community support. Like, for example, I think what's happened with the Rust SDK, which I don't think anyone's actually using, like that's just kind of fallen by the wayside. And we should probably dump it, actually, I think. There's no guarantee it works. So just something we should consider. But I think there's enough ask for a Node client that's probably something we could definitely sort of support.
And along those lines, just so folks know, like our plan is down the road to move Agones to its own GitHub organization. And the reason I mentioned that is because that'll allow us to have like a repo specifically for ecosystem.
Yeah, that'll be good.
We can put in things like the Rust, and then we can just say like this is not fully supported, but we still want to make it available to folks. So keep that in mind for when you're thinking of these different integrations.
Yeah, I've seen us do that in other places. But yeah, Stephen, please write a ticket for that, and then at least we can track it.
And then there was some stuff I mentioned about monitoring, but I think, I noticed in Milestone 8 there's already some really good, cool monitoring stuff. I've not seen it yet in action, but looking forward to that. And then one thing, I don't know if it's specific to us, but it'd be really useful to measure concurrent users. So I don't know if that's something worth thinking about, or is that more on the kind of user side rather than the library side?
So you want to talk about metrics? Since we're it seems to be heading into that area.
Yeah. So the question is, how are we going to provide concurrent user?
Just to measure it, yeah.
Well, I don't know the type of game you're running currently, but so far what we have is more in terms of how many game server you have, and the rate of the stage change. So that's very nice for being able to see the how your cluster is working and handling the load. But for the CCU, so far we don't really have anything related to player in the SDK, or so there is no, like, Agonize doesn't know anything about players so far. So and I don't know if we want to go into that direction. But depending on the game you have, if you know that your game is say 10. It's a 10-player game for every server. You can guess how many competitors you have based on the game server.
So I'll ask that question because I've actually been wondering, like, we were talking about metrics and also thinking about 1.0. I think there's opportunity for us to create like in server metrics that we could expose. Yeah. But I don't know whether we want to do that for like 1.0 or we want to push that. I'm thinking we push that out to past 1.0 is sort of what I'm thinking. How do you feel?
Yes. And that will be, and if we do that, then yes, for Steven, we will be able to do CCU. Because you'll be able to register how many players currently are playing on that game, and then you can do the aggregation on the backend side. So that that would be the solution for you, Steven. Waiting that we have like more game server metrics. So like maybe via the SDK or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's stuff we could do, like especially like frame count and like being able to graph out hit, like just standard stuff that everyone needs. I just think it gets complicated, and I don't want to push things. That's my thought anyway. I don't want to push things out, but we should track that. We've got some notes in the original metrics ticket, but I think Cyril, we were saying that what we would probably do is close out that ticket and maybe write a new one for in-game metrics to look at a later date.
Yes. I think my plan was to finish that one, and finish means I want to have a game server allocation, because we don't have that currently. It's still on the fleet allocation. So we need to have this one. And then I had a talk with Jarek, and we were thinking that it would be nice to have also some node information that currently we don't have. So say the average maybe game server per node, and the amount of node that you currently have. So that's something that I'm going to be working in the current release. And then once we have those two in, plus the stack driver, which is already working, then I think we can close the metrics, unless someone has a request in between. But I think for the metrics of the Agonize, that should be it. And then after, definitively, I will open another ticket to talk about game server metric.
That's great.
That sounds like a good way forward to me.
Yeah, and Steven, I can send you the link about the documentation that explain all the metrics that are available. There's a lot of them. Not all of them are really useful for a user point of view, but there's already like almost every resources as is on a counter or histogram. So you can already see some nice stuff there. I will send you the link.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. Although I guess because we're going to start deprecating features, whether it's worth producing a guide for that kind of thing, or if it's straightforward, I guess we don't need it.
Yeah. So the way probably if you have a look at one of the preview websites, you'll see it in there. The old stuff, the fleet allocation stuff, has deprecated markers on it, and it'll also come up in the changelog as well. We're going to give it a couple of versions before getting rid of it entirely, and you can use both at the same time as well. Like it's even though we're alpha, it's still having some consideration to backward compatibility, because I know you're live, which is fine too. So I wanted to give, especially something as important as fleet allocation, that like allocation is such a core thing. I'd hate to build a whole new thing and then like get rid of the old one, which we know works. So I'd much rather still give people a fallback and make sure that the new thing actually works in the way, because the new one's more complicated. So that's that too. But if you see other ways that we can definitely, if you're unhappy with how the deprecation stuff comes through, or that, we usually have a breaking change section in our changelog that shows that. So hopefully that's good. I try and put it in the literally I copy paste the features and breaking changes out of the changelog and put it in the release note, like the release on GitHub, and that goes out in the mailing post, and that goes out in the new blog post on the new website as well. So it all becomes the same. So hopefully it should be fairly obvious. If not, I'll make sure it's obvious.
Okay, I guess I'm next. I'm Yarek. I'm a Googler, and I recently started contributing to Agones, and we have a small team here that's trying to make improvements. And we started thinking of load testing and investing in that. And I'm curious if you guys have anything to help us guide the load testing, especially requirements for like what can we call 1.0, like in terms of how big of fleet sizes do we need to support, um, throughput of game server creations, deletions, spin up, spin down, and in terms of allocations per second. You guys can share any kind of expectations for your types of games. It would be great.
I was also going to say, if you don't want to do that openly, we can always set up email accounts as well.
It's always fun to put people on the spot on calls.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I would say maybe Yarg, if you can put your email address, if you're willing, in the working doc, and then can direct folks to reach out directly if they want to talk one-on-one. I imagine, if nothing else, maybe it's something that folks haven't really thought through yet either. So just maybe need some time to kind of think through. And that's also kind of a good tie-in for, as part of the overall project governance. Fire alarm, yay!
That's hilarious. I was also going to say, Yarek, do we want to start, do you want to write a ticket so that we can track that stuff somewhere?
So there's a ticket already for the load testing, right? If people could just add
okay, perfect.
their expectations, like what is a success? Like when do we say that the load test has proven that we can achieve good performance, and I know it's hard to come up with those numbers. I've been trying to get those numbers from various people, and it's like really not something that is easy to get. But if you know about certain requirements, we would certainly try to meet them, and so it'd be good kind of guiding.
April had to leave because apparently there's a fire drill in our office, which is hilarious.
So I'm still on the case for the requirement, and as soon as I have numbers, I will reach out to you.
Awesome, sounds good.
It looks like I'm running stuff now. Cool. I think April was also going to mention that we're working on some more governance stuff. So we're gonna do a sacrificial draft for some technical steering committee and some other stuff, maybe some working groups. We'll see how we go. So we'll come up with a sacrificial draft, basically based on some of our knowledge from what we've done previously, and then share it with the group, and then we can all iterate on it and make sure it's all good and everyone likes it and stuff. Because we're looking at the meeting, we actually have a bunch of people doing stuff in different areas, which is pretty awesome. Cool. What was I gonna? Okay. Oh, I go again. Yeah, sweet, fun. Oh yeah, Yarek, are you done? By the way, I jumped in.
Yes, I'm done. Thanks.
All right, sweet. I wanted to ask a question too about if people can see particular areas in which we can improve our getting started experience, if there are any particular holes that people are seeing. I know one particular area that I've been meaning to do for a really long time is sort of like a life cycle doc of what a game, what at a opinionated or best case scenario, maybe of opinionated doc of what the flow is from say a matchmaker through Agones through the SDK and the game server and back out again. I'd like to do that. I probably actually might even get onto that this week, but I'd like to hear if there are any particular things where you're this was a stumbling block. This is something we could document better. This is an example that I'd really like to see. Anything along those sort of lines. I'd love to hear if anyone has that as a thought, putting people on the spot.
I think it was mostly straightforward to set up. It's just the kind of technical issues, issues we had before, installing a new version of Agones and having to tear down the cluster and spin it up again. Just teething problems like that.
Yeah, upgrades is an interesting one. don't know if that's actually a solved problem that we have right now. Is that how you're doing it now? You just tear down the whole cluster and start a new one?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, which is not totally unreasonable, but yeah, I can understand. There are, especially right now, it's something I've been thinking about too, as for example, I was thinking about potentially lowering permissions on certain RBAC things if we can. And then if we do that, that could potentially break stuff that's already running. Because if you lower the RBAC permissions and you have sidecars that have the old service account, then how do you manage, like, it just gets really messy. Do we advocate that people start whole new clusters? And maybe that is the answer. It's not the worst answer in the world. Don't know. It's a good question. Anything else?
Maybe we could also have a documentation explaining how can you roll out a new version of your game server, saying like we have the game server location that we can take advantage for doing a rollout. And I think that would be interesting to have like a guide explaining how you can take advantage of these resources to scale up and scale down your 2 fleets.
Yeah, there's actually, that's probably really interesting too, because you could do, there's the various fleet strategies that already exist. There's also, then you could also do multiple fleets. That's probably also ties into game server allocation, which can then, yeah, that's actually, that would be really cool documentation. How do I tie into that, so then it becomes either sort of manual scaling or doing smoke tests, etc.
So I think that's going to happen probably way before trying to upgrade Agonize. Some production will probably update their game server very often to optimize it as much as they can. So I feel that this is something that should be written somewhere, like a documentation.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Nice. Anyone else? Any other particular things that have tripped people up? Oh, April's back. Are you outside, April?
Yes, I am.
That's hilarious. So apparently there's a real fire. Someone really didn't want this community meeting to happen. All
okay, right. I'm back at least partially.
Did you? I touched on governance a little bit. Did you want to?
Okay, sweet.
Go into that a little bit more, or I just said that we're working on stuff essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say for some of these issues, like around testing and things like that, that would be a good working group for us to spin up. So as folks are starting to think about features and things like that you want in a 1.0, if you think it's something that we should spin up a little working group to dig into, just reach out and we can certainly do that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what a working group might entail?
Yeah, generally it's just a smaller meeting with people that are, interested in working on a certain issue. They have leads. You do not have to volunteer to be a lead if you want to start a working group, but we'll find one. And essentially, the groups usually make the actual decisions. So, but it's just a way to focus and drill down on certain areas of the project. If you're familiar, I think a lot of you are familiar with Kubernetes and the SIGs, and it's kind of the same thing, but we don't use the SIG word because that's given to Kubernetes.
Cool. I want to take a moment to say congratulations to Jarek. He is the first person who has gone through our new process to become an approver on the project. So well done. I just wanted to actually talk about it for 1 sec, just in case you didn't see the issues go through or anything like that. if you want to become, basically we have, here we go, I can present again. Window. If you're interested in becoming, or basically having approval, where are we? Here we go. So if you have a look in our contributing guide, we have a section called Becoming an Improver on Agones. We have and this takes us to a community membership guide. So right now we only have a single role within the project, which is an approver role. Basically, this means that you can approve things as they come through, is the short answer. There's a few requirements in that, like, we ask for you, here we go, there's a whole list of requirements in which, we expect you to have done some work previously, and you need sponsorship from true approvers from different companies. And then you can set up some, and get that kind of stuff. But if that's something you're looking at doing and you're quite happy with the responsibilities and privileges that's given to you because of that, that is something that the people can do. So just making sure that people are aware that that's a thing, if that's something that they're particularly interested in being involved in. It does mean that you get to hit PRs and hit the approve button, which is fancy.
Anyway, there's one set of permissions which I think would be nice to kind of be given broadly, so that people can assign issues to themselves. I'm not sure if there's an easy way to get something like that set up.
That's GitHub being GitHub. Unless you're attached as a contributor to the project, it won't let you write assignations. I don't know if April, do you know any way around that? You actually probably have more experience in that area.
Yes, we can work on that. I completely know what you need, and we can fix that. And I apologize, I'm going to mute again because the fire trucks are here. So.
I will make a note here. How do we set things up so that anyone can be assigned to a issue? Because that would be nice. I'll add April.
I'm also thinking setting tags, at least some initial version of tags. That would be also nice to have.
Oh, do like a automated triage type thing.
Yeah, or have more people that can assign tags without necessarily being improvers.
Yeah, you should be able to do it now. You're approver, actually.
Yes, I know, but like when I was filing issues, I couldn't set any tags on them. That was kind of annoying.
Got it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And we, I apologize. I had not checked into all the GitHub perms yet and made sure everybody had that ability, but we will review the structure and set that up, because you're right. It makes things a ton easier if people can tag their own issues.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for raising that.
Good one. Anyone else got any particular things about contributing experience that they'd like to see fixed, since we're on the topic, that they found particularly painful?
Maybe not painful, but so we are running all the end-to-end tests as pre-submits, right? And I would imagine that at some point there will be some longer running tests that would emerge that you don't want to run as pre-submits. And we actually had some internal discussion here, and the conclusion was maybe that we could establish some post-submit type of tests that would run maybe every hour or every half an hour or something, and publish some kind of like a test grid, like the one that Kubernetes has, so that people see the red and green signals without having those things necessarily block submits. And those will be mostly like, bigger fleet sizes, which wouldn't be feasible like in like a normal, pre-submit type of test.
Yeah, I think we'd had that conversation at one point too. I think that's a good thought as well. There's some limitations there. It would be nice if on certain things, if you don't touch certain things, like end-to-end tests don't run, or like if you make a documentation change, then, or if it's just documentation, certain tests don't run. But the functionality kind of isn't there right now, so I haven't worked out a good way of doing that.
I think if you have multi-repo, it should be fine. No, isn't it?
Sorry?
Like if we have a Agonize organization, and then inside you have the documentation website as a repo and the code as a repo, then when you change the documentation, you don't actually trigger the build.
Yeah, that's true. The only thing I don't like about that is I love the fact that when the site and the code is together, you have to write the documentation when you write the code. Otherwise, the incentive to write the documentation after you've written the new feature is kind of low, and then documentation doesn't get written. That's the trade-off I kind of see there.
Yeah.
But it feels like if we want that, that should be somehow enforced.
Yeah, that's a good point too. We could, that's a fair point.
If you're adding it,
it
must be documented. Some kind of like change detection. I don't know. Test.
Yeah. Or you have to write a comment that says, "Here's my documentation over here," something like that. Yeah, we could build some tooling around that. That's totally reasonable. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Sweet.
Do you want to talk about the end-to-end test? That has been very flaky lately.
Yeah, it has been really flaky lately. It was fine for like a good couple of days. And then
so we saw most flakes when we tried like increasing the number of workers in controllers, and that actually uncovered a bunch of race conditions that we quickly fixed, and let's hope those are stable now. But if you guys are seeing some instabilities, definitely give us a shout, and we'll work on file issues and
yeah. Actually, Jeremy just joined. I know on his PR there's something weird. It seems to be, I don't know if it's his PR that's particularly flaky. It seemed like the most recent, seems like it was stable up until that point. So I don't know if it's the PR or whether it's that, but I'm happy to have a look. Yeah, if people are submitting PRs and they're seeing that they're being particularly flaky and they're not sure if it's their PR or whether it's that, reach out on Slack or even on the ticket and we can have a look.
I was actually about to do that. I was trying to debug this yesterday, and one of the problems I was having personally was I don't know how to debug these things with. It looks like there's a server that's not syncing the stuff, but I'll follow up on Slack on that.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at that today too on your particular one to see if there's that. We do have a troubleshooting guide somewhere in here. That's actually a really good question. Where did that go? Probably can also be extended. And search is still not working on the website. Oh, that's fun. Here you go, troubleshooting some of the guides. There is a troubleshooting guide that sort of takes you through various logs and things you can look at, but if there's more stuff we can do there, then that would be good. We can happily expand that too. Cool. So we still have 25 minutes. So if anyone has like questions, thoughts, feelings, anything they want to talk about.
I just wanted to say to Jeremy that maybe you can run the end-to-end test on your machine using either Kind or Minikube or your own cluster. And then if you don't have the same issues, then it's definitely an issue with the end-to-end test.
Yeah,
you could do that. I think it's a good practice anyway before you're submitting a PR to run the battery of end-to-end test locally.
I tend to one thing I've do on this is I found I can run individual end-to-end tests in my IDE, and so I usually don't run the whole things because they take a while, but I'll run like the ones that I know are relevant to what it is that I'm doing. And so if I see one that's particularly flaky, I'll run that myself locally, see if that one works against it. I usually run that on Minikube. It usually works straight out the box. Actually, you did magic, Cyril.
I think that right now we should be able to significantly up the parallelism of the tests, right?
Right now it's on 32.
When you do make tests, P2E?
I think make test right now. Right now, make test is set to whatever the default is because Minikube sometimes doesn't have a lot of resources and stuff. We could expand that on the cluster on our end-to-end test cluster. We run 32, and I actually made the size of the cluster bigger too.
And I think it takes like 2 minutes now, or that kind of order of magnitude, right?
Yeah. So maybe what we actually can do as well is extend the functionality of make end-to-end test for local usage so that you can pass in a parallelization parameter and then you can adjust it depending on how big your clusters are and stuff.
And there's technically one already. You can just pass args and those args will
there you go. Yeah. That's true.
So you can trigger like 64 or even more go routines in parallel.
Yeah. We should also I think right now the resource usage on simple UDP inside that is still the default. We could probably lower that and give our cluster some more room as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I think we should be able to test with simple UDP and like really densely pack those.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still a ticket for that. It just hasn't been done yet.
We've applied it to some YAML files, but not to all the places. So
yeah, it has it in, and there's actually kind of spread out in a few places, so we could probably centralize that somewhere.
Yeah.
I
think we should be easily able to saturate like that pod per node limit of 100 and something.
Yeah. Yeah, simple UDP is not exactly expensive.
So I wanted to talk about the end-to-end test because I'm wondering if at some point we want to look for other option. If someone is, thinks that the direction we have, maybe it's not scaling with the size of the team currently, maybe we can look at having multiple cluster. That's something that would be also maybe easy to as a quick fix, or just look for virtualization Kubernetes like a kind or Unicube.
Basically, you're saying so that we can run end-to-end tests concurrently.
Yeah, which is not the case right now.
Yeah, right now it kind of goes into a queue, and one of us manages it, which has actually gotten better now that Yarek's on approval, and I'm not just doing it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
The other option that I was thinking as well, we could also do is do some sort of bot utility that says like once something's approved, it just manages the process queue somehow and just feeds them in one after another. So it becomes less of a manual thing. But yeah, it is sort of 10 minutes at a time. I'd be interested to see how long it takes on kind. Yeah, bigger clusters means somewhat faster, which is nice. Let's put that in.
I have small questions regarding the versions and the website. Would we have some drop-down lists for versions on the documentation?
That's also a really good question. Let's write that down. Do we have some drop-down for versions of Agones? Right now, no, we don't. The thing that I need to work out is how to do the easiest way of solving this problem would be to do subdomains. I need to look at our internal red tape to work out how we manage domains to make that a thing, and I can't remember.
Can we do something like what you did for each PR, where you set up a website with like this weird name, and if we just have like a nicer name that would actually stick around for some time?
Yeah, we could do that too. We tend to be asked not to use AppSpot domains. That's the only thought. So if I can get a subdomain for agones.dev, or I have some more control, I just need to do the exploration. Is Google red tape. That's really it. Short answer. We could definitely do it on an AppSpot domain. It's not the end of the world. I would just prefer not to, and it's not as pretty. We could do subdirectories are a bit of a pain just because of the way the website's set up. If you redeploy, it recreates everything because it gets generated out of Hugo and that kind of stuff. But we should find a way of doing this at some point, particularly when we do release candidates. We want to make sure that you have a website you can go to for the release candidate so you can see what the new features are for that release candidate. And we could reuse something like that. Like we could do like an rc.agones.dev or something. Because I think that can be overridable, and then each major version gets its own domain going through. I just need to work out how to do it. But that is a good question. It's on my listers already, but oh, nice. That's a good question. I will also, since we're also here, boom. Tickets for these items. That's good. Oh, I don't know if anyone has feedback as well. You may have noticed that failing builds now have don't dump the whole don't dump the whole log in there anymore. I'll bring it up. Tell me if anyone hates it. It was meant to have both the cloud build view and just the straight log file, which is actually public, available in the link, but for whatever reason, that's not showing up in the build tools because I don't know, I write bad JavaScript when I write cloud functions. But let me know if that's particularly onerous. And basically, the short answer is if you join Agones Discuss, then you should have access to Cloud Build View now, because I've set up some IAM permissions inside the Cloud Build to let you do that. And the log is now in a public bucket. So you should be able to see all of it, which is actually should be a much nicer experience because you can actually see which step it is that failed, regardless of whether or not, you know, whatchamacallit, so that when you, what's the word I'm looking for? So you can see which step failed and you can actually like lower it down and see exactly what it is that's going wrong. It's much easier to find out what things are happening. But if there are tools there right now, all of the hooks for all this stuff and the integration from Cloud Build to GitHub is on a private repo, mainly because it has my GitHub token in it. And I don't feel like sharing that with people. Or has a GitHub token, has the Agones GitHub token in it. I should sit down and think about if there's a good way of making that more open. And so that we can all work on that too. But yeah, let me know how you feel about that. Sorry, Alexander, you're gonna say something.
Is it okay to make another push to the GitHub to trigger new build after fail, or how we can rebuild it?
Oh, if you go to PR, here we go. Here's an old one. Bam. That's the one that Jeremy's working on, and it failed. So you can see there should be 2 links there. There's actually only one. I want to fix that. I also found out the other day that you can add tags to Cloud Build, which actually is the way that you determine which Cloud Build is running, which is going to make my life a lot easier. I was doing weird stuff to determine if it was a CI build or other fun things. But yeah, you should have access to that now. So you can actually see the history now as well and all the good things. It just took me a while to realize how to do that.
And how much concurrent cloud views are available? Or I mean, concurrent yards or something.
I don't think there's necessarily a huge limit, actually. I'd actually have to look at whatever the quota is for Cloud Build.
Okay, so
we basically pay for it on the Google side.
Yeah, so there is no limitations if I want to trigger one more. Yeah.
No, I don't think we have. What are we? From time to time, it's about 10 concurrent builds per project. There we go.
Okay, thanks.
I actually had to go look that up. That's a good question. Cool. How you doing, April? Are you on fire?
We were allowed back in, so the fire department came. They looked around. Apparently, it's fine. They didn't bring a dog, which was disappointing, but we're all good, apparently.
We're all good. Awesome. I've run out of things. I don't know if anyone else has other stuff.
Well, if not, then we will meet again next month. If you have thoughts on what's like if this time worked or if a different time would be better, please do share it. We want to pick. We know that no time is going to work for everybody, but we can find what works for the most people. So, and then I'll send out a message to the mailing list when the recording is up, so you can share that with anyone that may have missed it and wants to catch up.
Unless there's anyone else who has other things they want to talk about, which because we have time.
Yeah, I just thought about some kind of Katacoda tutorials for the project, or it's not possible. Like Katacoda has Kubernetes, some Dockerize tutorials where you can just make kubectl commands. I think similar to Agones is possibly achievable. Or if it is useful. I don't know. I will just go. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's kind of cool. I wonder if we could even do that, or how we would do that. But that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, because it's like easier not to run than to run a cluster. Or you can use Meteor, of course.
Yeah, I wonder how we can do that. That would actually be really interesting to some sort of interactive tutorial type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the GRIS thing. Stuff.
Mark, we could mainly maybe talk with the Cat Coda team because they've done a lot of that for Kubernetes and others.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea a lot. Be interested to see what that would look like too, because usually part of our quick start is you connect something to that, but we could, I'm sure there's ways we can make that work.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that idea.
All right. Does anybody have any other questions or want to just say hi, introduce yourselves, share what you're working on? I don't like to put people on the spot, but if you want to do that, we certainly have time and welcome it. All right, last call for anything. Otherwise, we'll.
We're trying to get some Googlers to introduce themselves, but they're having audio issues. So just a second.
Okay.
I can.
Technology, can't trust it.
You know.
Sorry, Jeremy.
I can introduce myself. Jeremy Edwards. I came from GCE. I'm brand new to Agones, and I'll be working a lot with this project.
Welcome.
Thank you. You're unmuted. Hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I'm Ilker. I'm just using the Eurex laptop, so I'm having some issues with my machine. I'm a new Googler, so I joined the team about a few weeks back, and I'm just coming out of my initial training, and I'm more to start kind of do the code reads out, and then hopefully start early next week to look into some of the issues. I already got one assignment. I'm very excited and looking forward to work with you all guys.
Awesome. Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for sharing your laptop, Yark. It's always fun with technology. Today's meeting, if nothing else, has been about being flexible. You know, helping each other out. Yeah, along those lines, if you are, you know, working on stuff and you want a demo or anything, by all means, feel free to sign up for a future meeting. We'd love to have folks demo things they're working on, whether you're a maintainer or you're just in the general project ecosystem. We always love to see how folks are using the project and get feedback and things like that. So always feel free to share your cool stuff with everybody.
Well, on that subject, I'd like to have a presentation from the scaling Yarek has been doing. That would be nice to see it live.
Yeah, yes. Not all the pull requests have been merged, but yeah, we have some pretty exciting numbers.
Yeah, it would be great to see that live.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And yeah, along those lines, like Cyril said, if there's something that you would like to see a demo of,
Yeah, let's try to do it next time, and then all the PRs should be merged in so everybody can replicate it for themselves.
Nice. Thanks.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining for this very eventful inaugural meeting of the Agones community. Hopefully future meetings are less disruptive. Thank you again for being here and making the time. And please do reach out with any questions or anything you need between now and the next meeting. But look for an invite for a meeting towards the mid-end of February. Thanks again for joining, and we will hopefully see everyone on the next call and on our GitHub comments and issues. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, April.
Okay.
Yeah, bye.